PPE technically stands for Personal Protective Equipment, a term that has been widely used since the beginning of the coronavirus pandemic. An acronym that we have been constantly hearing as we have come to learn that it is what protects healthcare workers, frontliners, and any other individual from getting infected. But regardless of being a healthcare worker, can the acronym PPE also hold elements that would carry us through in living our lives? In March of last year, I can vividly recall the moment when schools and universities started to close its doors. In fact, prior to that, I, along with some council members, have been discussing and thoroughly planning for this big cultural day event at the university, only to have it unexpectedly canceled a week after. And I'm pretty sure that just like that event, countless other plans everywhere were halted. And what was regarded as a 1 to 2 week off brought us to more weeks and months and until a year of just facing our screens, wondering when we could ever go back to normal. Years ago, no one even saw this coming, maybe except for Bill Gates, who at 2015 gave a TEDx talk of how we must prepare for the next global outbreak. And true enough, here we are. For many of us, this whole situation has been a challenge to digest. I see people expressing their sentiments all over social media about how months of staying at home has made most of us feel like prisoners, creating immense feelings of isolation. And about how online classes and work from homes can be as mentally draining. And about how the pandemic just left us feeling lost and confronted us with this ruined timeline of plans. And beyond that, it was also a drastic 360-degree turnaround for me, losing my dad to COVID, which was an unfathomable thing to live with. Who would have thought that it could have been that bad? Exactly a year ago, all I could do was continue with my online classes on the side as I curled up into my sheets and dealt with such traumatic loss. I felt like I was stuck in a void that seemingly had no light at the end of it. But it was also amidst this series of struggles that I found the first P. I found purpose. And this purpose is what keeps you grounded when all else fails. And because of this purpose, I find myself here today, sharing with you a gift through this talk that could hopefully in one way or another cultivate this refined perspective in each one of us. However, this purpose wasn't a passive discovery. It didn't unfold the moment I felt grief or melancholy, or the moment I woke up in the morning feeling empty and lost. Seeking and finding one's purpose requires active self-reflection. And that is exactly what I've done. As defined, active self-reflection is when we make a deliberate effort to dig deep into our core, to regularly examine, link, and develop meaning from our experiences. And it does take time to build up. From that heartbreaking loss, I had endless questions of why, of what the purpose is for it to transpire in that way, and what is in it for me to experience such gravity. These thoughts kept lingering in my head, and the only way to find peace within myself was to find answers. And to find answers, I had to step back. I had to acknowledge my emotions, and I had to reflect. And there are many ways to engage in reflection. If you happen to be someone with this tight spiritual background, you can do it through prayer or through a religious ritual that you firmly believe in. You can also grab a book to read, whether it is a holy book, a self-improvement book, or a fiction novel. In 2010, a study was conducted on a group of 26,000 teenagers throughout Wales and England. And they learned that those who read the Bible appeared to have built the stronger sense of purpose. While a survey of empirical studies from Raymond Marr and his colleagues revealed that a relationship between reading poetry and fiction and a sense of purpose among adolescents were existent. So reading is a silent yet powerful activity that connects us to ideas of people that we may never even know. But research suggests that diving ourselves into these kinds of insightful narratives opens our minds to establish this sense of meaning. Because purpose, after all, can also be considered as an intellectual pursuit. So find books that matter to you. And this might help you cope up and realize what truly matters in your own life. And as much as reading can help, so does reflective writing. It is important to list the things that you have in your mind to alleviate the overflowing thoughts and questioning. From there, you can release all the tension in your head, organize it, linking every idea to build something clear and meaningful. It may be in the form of a mind map, a diary, a journal, or a story. You don't have to construct something of perfect words, grammar, or structure. Just freely express everything you are thinking and feeling in paper. Or you can also opt to speak and record yourself if you think that would be more effective for you. Otherwise, it is truly tough to draw conclusions and realizations when our mind is overwhelmed. So writing all these down is just similar to how we jot down notes in lectures. Every time we get overwhelmed with information and every time we spot something of notable importance. And the moment we go back to it to review, these notes may even be jumbled up and disorganized. But having a record of it in the first place allows us to reorganize everything, understand how ideas connect with each other, and later on realize the gist and the general purpose behind this particular topic. So never underestimate the power of writing. Document all these thoughts and feelings to help you see things in a bigger picture and to give you a record that you can always go back to, because we never know how useful it can be in the long run. And apart from these two ways, one also cannot erase the fact that we human beings are social beings. So you can also choose to reach out and have a conversation with a trusted friend, a family member, a colleague, or a mentor to help you unravel unspoken and inexplicable thoughts and eventually dissect meaning. Reflection may be done more effectively when you're not all alone, when you have someone else by your side who actually helps you build up your thoughts, who helps you identify the things that you have failed to acknowledge by yourself, and who just shares this different perspective on the table. At the end of the day, all these ways boil down to the active seeking of purpose. Because I realized that my purpose wouldn't just descend in time while wandering inside that void that I was stuck in. And that the only way out was for me to find my way and constant search for a positive meaning out of my circumstances. Shifting my questions from why me into what is in it for me. And upon having clarity of purpose day by day, I was able to find a beam of light in that void. A light that is far away in an outstretched empty space. And I realized that as I go in small steps further, the light seems to be a little more visible. But in order to fully grasp that light, I had to be willing to endure the second P, the process. The process involves a series of actions that leads us to a certain goal at the end. And some of the things that we must really keep in mind about the process is that it is never instantaneous, never smooth sailing, and never really conforming to repetitive actions from beginning to end. In my case, the grieving process wasn't a staircase to the goal because it wasn't always progressive in a way that places me in each step higher in time. It was more of an uneven process full of twists and turns, days when I would feel better for a while and then afterwards I would once again find myself sulking up in the reality that my dad is no longer around and I would feel worse again. Whenever I would have some urgent errands outside during those early times, I remember how it felt so new to me. Not just because I've been stuck at home for months, but mainly because of the idea that my dad is no longer there. And I would shed a couple of tears in the car as we passed through the streets of the city, because I'd remember that it was him who actually brought us here. So it was tough to ease that kind of pain and longing, because almost every place and every moment reminded me of him. But just like any other process, the coping actions being done at the beginning shall not remain as it is throughout the entire process. I remember during Father's Day last year, I decided not to open any of my social media accounts at all, because it would terribly hurt me to see Father's Day greetings with the fresh and the current situation that I was going through. Each one of us has different ways of coping up. And so through trial and errors, one must be able to dynamically adjust and see which coping mechanisms worked and what new ways can be done to handle it better than before. This process's complexity develops that renewed perspective, resilience, and character that leads us to the final element, E, which stands for end goal. The end goal of the process, the light in that void. This is the destination that reinforces your purpose. It is the destination where you desire to see yourself after prevailing the highs and lows of the process. And this end goal for me was complete healing. And now finally having the courage to open it up and share it without breaking down. Although the pain never really goes away. Before, I used to think of my dad and I'd cry. But now, I am able to think of my dad and still find joy and gratitude. And that has always been what I wanted to achieve. I never thought that I would have to experience firsthand some of those unimaginable moments, but it brings me this great sense of fulfillment to finally be out of that void and to have gained a much higher level of strength and wisdom that I am able to share and uphold for myself as I head on to the next process and to the many other processes that I would have to face later on. Friends, this doesn't solely apply to the context of the grieving process or to the context of the pandemic. It is essentially applicable in life. We may be familiar with these three terms because it's simple and widely discussed in books and articles, but oftentimes we tend to overlook them collectively because we only consider and pay attention on an individual part of these three elements. And that is where we fall short. We may have a process without having a clear goal, or we may be undergoing a process without having a purpose to go back to when the process gets confusing and rough. Or perhaps we may have a certain goal, but we are not ready to fully commit to the time, challenge, and complexity of the process. All these three elements must always be glued together. So whenever you are in a crisis or in a tragedy, or simply in a position of wanting to move forward in life, ask yourself three basic questions. First, what are you working towards to? That is your end goal. Second, why are you doing it? That is your purpose. And third, how will you get there? That is your process. Link them into a powerful foundation that you would live by every day. Friends, PPE technically stands for personal protective equipment, but it may also mean purpose, process, and end goal. Three inseparable elements that would carry us through in COVID-19 and beyond. Brace yourself by harnessing your PPE. Thank you.